Well, hello and welcome again to our reading of Acts of the Apostles, and we're up to chapter 27, where Paul sails for Rome. Hos de ecrithe tu apoplen hemas est in Italian, procedidun ton te Paulon, te tinus heterus, des mortas, hecatontake onomati Iulio, peres Sebastes. So when, ekrithe is probably impersonal here, it had been decided for us to sail. So we get to plus the, so we get the articular infinitive here. So when it had been decided that we were going to sail to Italy, and notice it's the we, so Luke is implying that he is present at this point. Paredidun, they handed over, they didn't say who they are, but it must be the Romans. They handed Paul over and certain comrades who were desmortas, who were prisoners, to a centurion by the name of Julius, literally of the cohort of Sebastes, that is the Augustan. Sebastes is simply the Greek form of Augustus. So to Julius of the Augustan cohort. Epibantes, which is getting on board ship, and then we get ploio. So getting on board the boat, which was Adramutenus. This is a Roman name again. It's an Adramitium, and it was originally a little town near Troy. This is an adjective here. They named the boats after the places they came from. So having got on board an Adramitium boat, and in opposition to that, Melonti, which was about plain to sail, es tous kataton Asian topus, kataton Asian topus anekthemen. So being about to sail, as tous goes with the topus, to the places, kata ASEAN, about Asia, along Asia, so along the coast of Asia Minor is what he really means here. Anekthemen, we set off. This is from anago. So it's a passive form here, but it really simply means that we were taken off. So we were taken off by boat, which is why it's passive. So and we get a genitive absolute. Ontos sun hemen Aristarchou Macedonos Thessalonikios. So Aristarchus, the Macedonian from Thessalonica, being with us. Te de hetera cat ekthemen es Sidona, and on the following day, again it's passive here from katago, we were disembarked, or perhaps we put into Sidon, and Julius, and we get this nice use of here, krasamenos, to use, literally. So it often has the sense of treated, takes a dative. So Julius treated Paul, philanthropos, interesting word. It's only here in the New Testament, only once in the Septuagint, but we get our word philanthropically from that. So Julius treated Paul philanthropically or kindly. Having done that, epitrepsen, he handed, understand him, or rather, he gave permission. Normally it's to hand over, but he gave permission, and then it must be taken as dative here, poruthenti, that's referring to Paul. So he gave permission to him, that is to Paul, going to his friends, Tucain Epimeleus, to meet with care. So to be looked after, literally to meet with care. Kakethen for Kai Ekethen, and from there, again it's an ago, this is the aorist participle. So setting out from there, we sailed. Now we get an interesting use of the verb here, and in fact this whole chapter is full of very nautical terms that we have to translate fairly carefully. This huperpleo is to sail to the lee side of something. It's literally to sail under, but it's not really under, it's on what the sailors call the lee side of, that is the sheltered side, the side which is sheltered from the wind and the harsh weather. So from there, having got on board, we sail to the lee side of Cyprus, on account, now diatop plus the infinitive here, articular infinitive, on account of there being winds that were enantius, that were contrary, that were against us. And might be worth at this point having a little look at the map to see what's happened here. So here's a little map of Paul's journey. So he starts off here in Caesarea, goes up for a quick stop there, and then they move up here, and they're moving onto the lee side of Cyprus here, the one which is sheltered from the main part of the Mediterranean here. So he goes up to here, and he's going to go across to this next destination, which we'll come to in a second. So just to see what's happening in terms of the map. So he's going to go into this Myra, we'll come to in a second. So they went on the lee side on account of there being contrary winds. Totepelagos and the sea, the one Katatan Kilikian, just off Kilikia, so the sea, with the one which is just off Cilicia and Pamphylia, having sailed through that, so having sailed through that sea, which is just off Cilicia and Pamphylia, Cat Althamen, we came down into Myra of Lycia. And that was that place I just mentioned on the map. Kake, Huron, Kake for Kai Eke, and from there, Huron, the centurion, having found from Heurisco, Ploion, a boat, an Alexandrian boat, again an adjective here, an Alexandrian boat. Pleon is a participle, neuter participle from pleo, and it's agreeing with ploion. So the words, of course, are cognate. So ploion Alexandrinon pleon, sailing into Italy. So the centurion, having found this boat, this Alexandrian boat that was sailing into Italy, ena bibazden hemas es auto. It's caused us to step into it. So he placed us in it. So he transferred us on board, onto it. En hikanais de hemerais, bradu pluntes, kai mollis genomine katatan knidon, me prosiontos hemas tu anemu, hupa plusamen ten creten kata salmonen. Now this use of hikanos again for many, not sufficient so much, but many. So it's in many days. So after many days, bradu plountes. So bradu is slow. So sailing slowly, and genomenoi mollis, being in difficulty off the coast of Knidos. So they were having troubles off the coast of Knidos. Genitive absolute, since the wind was not allowing. This is from pros eao. Since the wind was not allowing us, hupa plusamen, we didn't have the wind on our side. Again, we sailed to the lee side of Crete, kata Salomne. Salmone was an eastern extremity of the island of Crete. So we sailed on the lee side of Crete, down just off Salomone. This kata in the sailing context just means near or off. It's literally sort of down from. Paralegomenoi, and this again is another technical term here, it means coasting along, mollis with difficulty. Coasting along it. The outtane refers to Crete, or possibly Salmone. Coasting along it, we came into a certain place which is called Kalous Limenas, appropriately named. It means beautiful harbour. Others translated as fair haven. It means beautiful, it's plural actually, beautiful havens, beautiful harbours. Hoi, and near to which was the city Lasea. Near to which was the city Lasea. So just to come back to the map again for a second to see what he's doing here. So we've come to Myra. Come around there, and he's gone down past Rhodes down into Crete, and here is this fair havens or beautiful harbour, and this other place that we just mentioned, Lasea, that we just saw here. Hikanu de chronu diagenomenu, genitive absolute again. So much time having passed, another genitive absolute, and the two plus, this is actually a genitive here, so it's and it goes with the ontos. So the voyage already being epispales, well, this again of course is genitive. This is the third declension noun, epispales, and so it means, well, we'd say slippery, perhaps treacherous. So the voyage already being treacherous. And now we get this very, very strange little line here, dia to plus infinitive. On account of literally the fasting already having passed. And then it says, Paul gave advice to them, saying to them. We'll come back to that in a minute. What's all the fasting business here? Well, this must refer to the day of Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. So it really means because the Day of Atonement had now passed, i.e. it was late September, early October. Now this is interesting in terms of both Luke and his audience, because this is a very cryptic line. Only a Jewish audience really would know what Luke is talking about here, and Luke is supposed to have been a Gentile, and there is some doubt now among some scholars about that perhaps Luke was had a Jewish background but was not practicing Jew, because he seems to know a lot about Judaism. And this very cryptic line here, again, would only be understood by someone who was fairly knowledgeable about Judaism and would know what this meant, because it's done in such a cryptic way. Anyway, so Paul, you need to look at the commentaries on this, but Paul then advised them, saying to them, Andres, O men, I see that. Now we get this very strange expression here, metahubrios kai poles semias. Hubris in classical Greek means more the sense of outrage or physical injury, insolence, and so on. And zemia is often used for punishment. Semio is the verb to punish in classical Greek. But here it's got more the sense of with injury and with much loss. And he uses exactly the same expression a little bit later as well, so it's an interesting expression here. So I see that, and now you have to go a bit further on. So I see that Melaine esesthai ton plune. I see that the voyage is about to be with injury and much loss, umonon alakai, not only of cargo and of the boat, but also of our lives, our souls, literally. So he says, I see that this voyage is about to be with much injury and much loss, not only in regard to the cargo and the boat, but also our very lives. But the centurion, now we get Marlon A, epathato, he was persuaded more by the kubernetes, the helmsman, this is the one doing the steering, by the helmsman and the ship owner, than, and it takes a dative here, then by the things being said by Paul. Kubernetes, interesting, where we get our word governor from that. And in fact, Americans talk about gubernatorial contests. We also get our word cybernetic from this, which is a rather interesting point as well. Anyway, so the centurion just ignores Paul and pays attention to his helmsman and the ship owner. And euthetu, again, an interesting word here. It's only here in the New Testament. I'm not sure I've seen it elsewhere. It means unsuitable. And we get a genitive absolute. So, and the archontos, like the verb to be here. So the harbour being unsuitable, pros in regard to parakymasian, in regard to spending the chyma, the winter. So since that was the case, hoi pleones, the majority, ethen tobulain, literally laid down the opinion, so advised, perhaps this expression is used in the Septuagint to lay down an opinion, so they advised anaktheni to set out by sea, ekathen from there, if pose perchance, it's that indefinite pose, you can see put its accent back on here, so if perchance they might be able, dunainto, arriving in Phoenix, which is a harbour of Crete, parakaimasai, to spend the winter. So perhaps I better take that bit first. So if perchance they might be able, going into Phoenix, to spend the winter, and then in apposition to Phoenix, this place is this Limina, which is a harbour. Blepontes is looking, so i.e. facing, a harbour of Crete. Bleponte, facing Kataliba kai Katakoron. Very interesting expressions. Liba is from lips, which is a southwest wind, and Katakoron, and down the north, Koros is a northwest wind. So it's a harbour of Crete, which is facing southwest and also northwest. Again, very nautical terms that are being used here in this chapter. And so we'll continue that in the next recording.